Respected elders, my dear brothers and sisters, the few verses that we are going to talk about today belongs to Surah Al-Kahf. Surah Al-Kahf, Allah says, وَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الرَّجُلَيْنِ جَعَلْنَا لِأَحَدِهِمَا جَنَّتَيْنِ مِنْ أَعْنَابٍ وَحَفَفْنَاهُمَا بِنَخْلٍ وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمَا زَرْعًا. Allah narrates a story of two people, two companions. One of them, Allah has blessed him with lots of wealth. The Surah Kahf we recite every Friday. These stories, these examples are so lively and so related to our lives that we are supposed to recite it every Friday and reflect on them. So this man who is very wealthy, Allah takes two ayah to describe his wealth. Allah says, strike for them an example, the example of two men. One of them, we gave two gardens. Gardens of what? Gardens of grapes. Grapevines. وَحَفَفْنَاهُمَا. We gave him gardens and we fortified the gardens. Allah is describing how exquisite the gardens are. We fortified his gardens with palm trees, with date palms. وَحَفَفْنَاهُمَا بِنَخْلٍ وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمَا زَرْعًا. And between the gardens, there were other kinds of agriculture, other kinds of vegetations. كِلْتَا الْجَنَّتَيْنِ آتَتْ أُكُلَهَا وَلَمْ تَظْلِمْ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. And both of these gardens were producing at the full capacity. You see, who are into farming, they would know that all of your crops don't give the same yield every year. Sometimes it's 80%, sometimes it's 70%, sometimes it's 50%. But Allah says, we gave him such crops, such a farm, that he was producing 100% capacity every year. وَلَمْ تَظْلِمْ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. وَكَانَ لَهُ ثَمَرٌ. And he had many other wealth. وَكَانَ لَهُ ثَمَرٌ. And Allah also says, وَفَجَّرْنَا خِلَالَهُمَا نَهْرًا. Before that, وَفَجَّرْنَا خِلَالَهُمَا نَهْرًا. Describing these gardens, Allah says that Allah has privileged these gardens so much that for agriculture, you need water, you need irrigation. Back in the day, for irrigation, it was not so easy like these days. They would need to have reservoirs. People would need to carry buckets of water. Animals were used. But Allah made a river flow through his garden. وَفَجَّرْنَا خِلَالَهُمَا نَهَرًا. We caused a river to flow through his gardens. In all these descriptions, Allah mentions himself that we gave him two gardens. We surrounded his gardens with date trees. We made a river flow through his gardens. Allah is describing how he himself blessed this man. And what does this man do? وَكَانَ لَهُ ثَمَرٌ. And he had lots of wealth. فَقَالَ لِصَاحِبِهِ. So he tells his friend, وَهُوَ يُحَاوِرُهُ. While he's engaged in a conversation with him. He's conversing with him casually. And he says in that conversation, أَنَا أَكْثَرُ مِنْكَ مَالًا وَأَعَزُّ نَفَرًا. I am greater than you in terms of wealth and manpower. He slips this in while they were having a conversation. Like, he doesn't, it's not like you going to someone else's house, knocking on their door, Assalamu alaikum, I have more wealth than you. Not like that. They were having a chat, a conversation, perhaps in a formal gathering, or, we have chat and conversation in weddings, in gatherings, different kinds of gatherings. In those kind of conversation, how are you doing? How's your family? In those kind of conversation, he slips it in. I am greater than you in terms of wealth, and I have more manpower. Like, when we go somewhere and we are chatting, people would go to a wedding, they would comment on everything. They would comment on the gold jewelry that the bride has. They would say, okay, the gold jewelry seems to be of 50 grams only. When I had the wedding of my daughter, I gave 3 sets of jewelries, each of them 200 grams, 300 grams. They would flaunt their wealth every opportunity they get. Having wealth is not condemned. Having a grand wedding is not condemned. Having a good property, nice property is not condemned. Being poor is not praised. There were Sahaba who were very wealthy, and there were Sahaba who were very poor. But the problem is, when this guy, every opportunity he gets, he tries to show off his wealth and put down others and look down on others. And he attributes everything that Allah gave him as a favor, he attributes all that to himself. And he says that I am greater than you. Which means that everything I have is because I deserve it. It is because of my intelligence, my efforts. And you don't have it because you are not deserving of that. So his friend, he doesn't reply. This man enters his mansion, enters his garden. وَدَخَلَ جَنَّتَهُ وَهُوَ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. And he is wronging himself. He says, مَا أَظُنُّ أَن تَبِيدَ هَذِهِ أَبَدًا. This extremely materialistic guy who is so delusional, his delusion of himself takes him to an extent that he starts having confusion of the day of judgment. Well, this was not supposed to happen. Having wealth is not wrong. But he was so delusional that all these wealth is because of his own intelligence, his own success, that he wants to believe that this is the end. There is no akhirah. When people get used to a luxurious life, they're so comfortable with their luxurious life, and all they can think is about their material gains and goals. They have a difficult time thinking about akhirah. They don't want to think about akhirah. Because the race for akhirah is a different race. They did not prepare for it. They have been only running after dunya. So when it comes to akhirah, I'm not sure. And then, when he can't convince himself of this doubt, he adds another confusion. Shaitan gives him another confusion. وَلَئِن رُدِدتُّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي لَأَجِدَنَّ خَيْرًا مِنْهَا مُنْقَلَبًا خَيْرًا مِنْ هَذَا مُنْقَلَبًا خَيْرًا مِنْهَا مُنْقَلَبًا. And even if there is something called akhirah, and if I were to return to Allah, I'm sure I'm going to get something better as well. If Allah can give me this amount of wealth, such a good life in this dunya, I'm sure Allah has a lot better for me in the akhirah. So let's get to think how he is thinking. He is measuring every material things that he has. He is deeming all these as the love of Allah. He is deeming all these as something Allah has rewarded him with because of his intelligence and his efforts. All his materialistic gains equals to success, equals to pleasure of Allah. This is how he thinks. So when he's having these delusional ideas, he insulted his friend. His friend didn't respond. When he's having these delusional ideas about himself and Allah and akhirah, then his friend responds, أَكَفَرْتَ بِالَّذِي خَلَقَكَ مِنْ تُرَابٍ. Are you really denying the one who created you from dust, ثُمَّ مِن نُطْفَةٍ, and then from a drop of liquid, ثُمَّ سَوَّاكَ رَجُلًا, and then he made you, proportioned you into a man? Forget your garden. You are nothing. You are even nothing. And you are now in denial of if akhirah exists, and you are in delusion about Allah. لكنه ولولا إذ دخلت جنتك قلت ما شاء الله. Before that he says, لكنه الله ربي ولا أشرك به أحدا. But he is my Lord. I will not do shirk with him. Why does shirk come here? Shirk comes here because shirk means associating partners with Allah. Did this person worship anyone other than Allah? No. But he was taking credit for all the things, all the materialistic things he enjoyed. He was taking credit for all those. He was being arrogant. And this is a type of shirk we are very negligent about. He thinks that he deserves all this. This is all fruit of his own labor, own efforts, own intelligence. This is a form of associating partners with Allah, this arrogance. So his friend says, وَلَوْلَا إِذْ دَخَلْتَ جَنَّتَكَ قُلْتَ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ. Could you not just say مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ when you entered your Jannah, when you entered your gardens, your properties? لَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. There is no might and no power except from Allah. Could you not recognize the favor of Allah on you at least? What does MashaAllah mean? MashaAllah means everything we have is by the favor of Allah. It is not because of my intelligence, my efforts. It is by the favor of Allah. Allah gives it to whomever He wills. And Allah may not give it from His wisdom, from whoever He wills. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Amma ba'd. So as this pious guy responds to his friend, he says, even if you see me today, in tarani ana aqalla minka mala wa walada, even if you see me today that I have less wealth and less children, less manpower than you, فَعَسَى رَبِّي أَنْ يُؤْتِيَنِي خَيْرًا مِنْ جَنَّتِكَ. It may be that Allah can give me a garden better than yours. Allah can give me nicer houses than your house. Allah can give me better properties than your property. It is Allah's will. He can give it whoever He wants. It's not a sign of pleasure or a sign of displeasure or anything. Allah can give it to whoever He wants. And the property, the wealth that you are bragging about, Allah can send a calamity from the sky and destroy it in seconds. And the wealth you are talking about, your gardens you are bragging about, Allah can cause the river, the water beneath it to sink in, and you will not be able to reach that water. The source of all these farming that you are bragging about, Allah can make it go away in seconds. وَأُحِيطَ بِثَمَرِهِ. And that's what happened. وَأُحِيطَ بِثَمَرِهِ. His property was surrounded by a calamity from Allah. It got destroyed in hours, in days. It was a barren land. وَأَصْبَحَ يُقَلِّبُ كَفَّيْهِ عَلَى مَا أَنْفَقَ فِيهَا. And he started turning his hands and tossing his hands and regretting of whatever he invested in the gardens. My dear brothers and sisters, this story ended with a positive ending. Even if this person lost everything he had, he realized that he was wrong. He said, "Ya laytani lam ushrik bi Rabbi ahada." Alas, I shouldn't have done shirk with my Lord. He understood and he repented even after all this. So what we need to take away from this is, let us come back to our senses before Allah strikes us with a calamity to make us realize that the materialistic things that we own, that we are after, does not mean anything in the eyes of Allah. It does not mean anything in the akhirah. It does not mean that we are worthy of these. And even not having these does not mean that Allah is displeased with us. May Allah make us among those who take reminders and follow them wisely. Ameen. Allahumma ameen. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين وفي السودان وفي لبنان وفي كل مكان. اللهم انصرهم ولا تنصر عليهم. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. أقيموا الصلاة.